Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Fumbling Gurus, a podcast that talks about the NFL. And I want to introduce you to your host. You have the one, the true, the Eagles fan, Mr. Gannon.
The Eagles fan,
The only one.
the only one.
And sitting in the bottom of the screen, for those watching, you have the one, the Tampa Bay fan, the basically a local, Mr. Tom.
Basically. Welcome back, guys.
You know we put you there because your team's always on top, so you need to be on the bottom sometimes.
I'm okay with that. I'll take that. Yeah.
And I'm John from, well, I'm the Dolphins fan. And when you talk about Miami, you're talking Super Bowl. Well,
Hmm.
guys, we made it. It's official. Yesterday was the start of camps. Football is back. Gee, man, how excited are you?
I think there's a lack of marshmallow in these camps. I did hear some pretty good things about the Eagles. Like Hurts is doing pretty good, but it's only day one of camp, so eh,
Yeah.
Well, I'm
Gotta
glad
take
that
them when
I'm,
you can get them, G-Man.
yeah. Well, ooh.
I'm so glad that you mentioned the Eagles because today's podcast, we are going to be very focused on the NFC North, which is not the NFC East. So yesterday there was some breaking news that happened. So I'm gonna kick this one over to Tom. But the Tampa Bay Buccaneers signed a rival, Mr. Julio Jones. Tom, talk to me.
Yeah, that's interesting development. I heard last week, I think it was late last week, there were some rumors of a kind of Hall of Fame wide receiver potentially coming over. And yeah, yesterday we kind of got news of this deal was inked and it was ready to go. And then today it seems it's official. Yeah, we Julio Jones 1 year deal. I think it was for like 6 million base salary. So I mean, he's getting a payday for sure. But he's following the trend of some of the Bucks team with a little bit of an older. I think he's 33 years old, and he's coming back from some injuries, a little bit of an off season last season. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see the dynamic as he was a rival. It was someone Tom Brady kicked out of a Super Bowl 1 year, so it'll be interesting addition. But I mean, we'll take it. We have Gronk that kind of left, and some other people to fill gaps with, so I think it'll be a nice addition.
We'll definitely go more in depth with the Buccaneers at a later date. But like I said earlier, we are going to be breaking down the NFC North. And so I want to jump right into this. I mean, I think when you look at it, you've got to talk about one team with this division. And of course, I'm talking about the Detroit Lions. Gannon, many people thought they would draft a quarterback. They're sticking with Jared Goff for one more year. They've got DeAndre Swift, who kind of came out of nowhere last year. I mean, he was a guy that was a rookie or second year player, had an okay rookie campaign, but really lit the league on fire and was a great fantasy guy for anybody who drafted him. Tom. They've got their big kind of free agent acquisition was at wide receiver with DJ Chark pairing up with the young ASB, Amon Ross St. Brown.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll kind of, I tell me, what do you expect out of this team? Is this a team that is improved enough to where they're going to be decent?
Look, last year when we were talking about the Lions, it was the team not to pick. I mean, how long have they gone bottom five teams in the NFL? A long time. I think that this year, I don't think they'll be bottom five. I mean, I can't say that they will be playoff bound by any means, or even second in the division by any means, but they might not be last. I think that they got enough weapons and they picked up enough decent players this year that they might actually have a chance of not being the embarrassment that the Lions usually are.
Embarrassment. That is where, as much as I feel bad for Lions fans, that is where we're at with them. Like their franchise, just don't be an embarrassment. Just be competitive. Now, one of their losses was just an absolute freak of a loss. You had the record breaking kick to win the game in overtime. I remember some controversy with that with the Ravens. That was the week that we all three picked, or the week after, whatever it was. But, anyways, it wasn't good. Tom, what did you see out of this Lions team?
Man, so of course, when we were taking a look at them, my first instinct was this is probably going to be my pick for last place in the division, right? Based on what we saw last year. Everything I read, a lot of people are picking this team to be a breakout team. Like they have some potential here. If you look at the individual pieces, some of the stuff that has been moved around in the offseason, there is a potential here. But yeah, they're coming off of a 3-win season. So to say they're going to break out this year and do anything greater than like 500 or even a winning record, I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. But I think there are a lot of things to look at with the team. I think DeAndre Swift is one of them. You saw him last season. I think he's going to be even better this season. But the question is, can he keep off of those injuries? I think he missed quite a bit of games last season from injury prone. So it's basically, is he going to start having that label of being injury prone and not being able to play a full season, or is he going to get through some of those smaller injuries and start showing up for most of the games there? And then Goff, I think, is the other question. But if you look at Goff at the end of last season, he had the last like 5 games. I think the only quarterback rated better than him was Aaron Rodgers in the last 5 games of last season. So he was doing pretty well in the towards the end of the season. So if they can keep that up, if they weren't they no, they didn't pick up the offensive lineman but yeah, I think they're there. But they won't be. I'm picking right around 500 to end the season.
Fair.
You know what? That's I could see that. I mean, this is a team, I Dan Campbell used to be a coach on the Miami Dolphins, and at one point he became the interim coach. And one of the things about Dan Campbell is he is an energetic guy. He is that you want to run through a wall. You will fight for him. Well, this team, I think, got that towards the end of the year. This team had a lot of fight. It may not have been good, but they fought hard. I'm excited to see what the second year under Dan Campbell looks like. Yes, they lost Trey Flowers. They cut Trey Flowers. They have missed some key pieces, but I kind of like what they did. I kind of want to see these young guys step up and see what they can do. Goff, not a good quarterback. He's going to hold them down, but they're going to be able to have a chance to go after one of the young guys in the draft next year. I will get to what I think, but Gannon, how does this team stack up in the division? Where do you see them kind of falling, filing?
So, God, you know, it's this being our first team we're talking about. I am gonna hint a little bit. Like, this team is the most improved team, like, out of these four teams, I would say. So, God, I would put it maybe third. I'd put the Lions third in the division. As crazy as that is, I I would put them third.
Okay, all right, I can see that because there is one team that I question, and we're getting ready to talk about them soon because they're in the division. But Tom, where do you see the Lions finishing?
I'm really stuck between third and fourth. I really don't think they can get higher than third in the division. I mean, of course, with the Packers, Vikings usually squeak out some wins there. So, man, it's tough for me to pick. I want to. I want them, like we were talking about. There's something that could be there for them, a spark this year. But yeah, I don't think they're getting higher than third in the division. And if I had to pick a spot, probably last again.
We just talked about them finishing 500, a breakout candidate. And I tend to agree with you. I think this team has improved. I'm excited to see where they improve. But with Jared Goff as your quarterback, the holes that they still have on defense, and the injuries that can easily pile up for them, I just don't see this team as a team that's getting over that hump. I
Hmm.
think they finished fourth in the division, and I think there's an improvement. Maybe 5-12, but having a bunch of close games that they just lose because of a Jared Goff late fourth quarter interception or something to that extent. But I am interested in seeing how the Lions perform this year. Talking about kind of the opposite, we kind of know what Goff is, what he's been, but there's this guy who had a lot of hype in the draft, last year's draft, who finally gets to start the year, and boy, was it ugly. They get their head coach fired, and the Chicago Bears and Justin Fields now take over a roster that is missing Allen Robinson. They do get their head coach, their choice, defensive coordinator, Matt Eberfluss. Should have looked up how to read that name. I'm not I remember reading that signing kind of unsure what they were doing. Why would you go with the defensive guy when clearly you need to fix the offense? Tom, what were your thoughts about the offense with the Bears and their new head coach?
Yeah, I mean, so I think that was everyone's first thought of, well, the Bears have kind of always been known for the defense, and you're just kind of going down that road again. Um, and like you said, there was a lot of question of, well, why are we're trying to fix the offense? No one can fix the offense here. Why are we bringing in another defensive guy? But I think I think it'll work out well because with a young quarterback, giving him a good defense behind him, hopefully means shorter fields for him to work with. Potentially more possessions, whatever it may be. It'll allow them to have that like less pressure on Fields, and allow him to just go out and get a field goal every once in a while. Don't have to score a touchdown every time. But I'm excited about it. If I'm going to talk about particular aspect of this team, they picked up a Tennessee Volunteers wide receiver in the draft, Velus Jones. So I'm interested to see how he does in the NFL because he did very well. If you guys aren't aware, I'm a Tennessee Volunteer fan, but he did pretty well in college, and so I'm excited to see him take that next step and hopefully does good things in the NFL as well.
One thing about that young or that really good defense last year, remember they traded Khalil Mack to the Oakland Raiders.
Hmm.
So they subtracted probably their two best players, Allen Robinson and Khalil Mack. I that's rough. Those are hard players
Yeah.
to fit. Uh, um, Gannon, what do you expect out of the Chicago Bears offense? I want to talk specifically offense with the Bears right now.
How did this team get better? Like on offense. Justin Fields, I guarantee you this team's gonna bomb and they're gonna need to trade Justin Fields away. Or not trade him away, but they're probably gonna drop him and be pretty high in the draft next year and need a new QB. I don't see anything on this offense that could warrant them being a contender, not only in the division but in the NFL. So
So you basically looked at this and said the Bears are really, really bad. They're bad
worse
on
than the
paper,
Lions.
and they.
Worse than the Lions. How crazy is that to say?
Yeah,
Worse
I.
than the Lions.
One thing though is when you get a new coach, you tend to get an improvement just simply because, well, new coach, new philosophy, it improves. But I look at that and I go, yeah, normally I'd agree with that, but you lost your best player on offense, Allen Robinson. I mean, let's face it, the guy is a monster and he's played with terrible quarterbacks. And then you lose Khalil Mack. And I know Khalil Mack was hurt last year, so he didn't play in that many games, but still, those are big presences to overcome. I just don't know what to expect out of this Bears team, and it's kind of worrisome. Tom Gannon asked a good question. Where did they improve? How did they improve? Did they improve?
So I'd say one thing that I took away from like their draft and everything is they really wanted to improve protection of the quarterback. They drafted four offensive linemen in this draft. I think there was like they had like 11 picks, and four of them were offensive linemen. So it says quite a bit about where their focus is. So even though they're picking up like a defensive minded coach, et cetera, they picked up a lot of players for offense. We mentioned the wide receiver, four offensive linemen, so they're putting effort into the offense. Whether or
One
not
thing
that,
that
yeah, we don't know if that'll pan out, but they're putting it there.
one thing that I will say is last year's head coach did not do a good job of playing to the strengths of Justin Fields.
Hmm.
And I'm a big believer that take a player what they do well and make it work. Don't sit there and try to force a scrambling quarterback to play in the pocket, and don't try to make a pocket quarterback play as a scrambling quarterback. Like that just doesn't work. And so I'm actually very curious and interested to see how they use Justin Fields. Will they use his strengths? I mean, the guy's athletic, he has a big arm. They did go out and sign Byron Pringle, a speedster from Kansas City. That's a big move. They drafted that kid. They're trying to bolster the offensive line. They need to get the running game going. Their running back was terrible last year, but it's going to be interesting to see what they do. But ultimately, I think we all probably agree where we see this team. Gannon, you kind of let the cat out of the bag a little bit. You think that they are
Yeah,
worse than the Lions.
I do. I honestly do. It would not surprise me if they were second to last in the NFL with 4 wins.
So you don't just think second, like, oh, I thought you was like second to last minute. I was like, no, no. You mean like this is a top three draft pick team.
Like, yeah, they're going high. They're getting rid of Justin Fields and they're getting a new QB next year.
Wow, that's giving up after quarterback after 1.5 years starting. That's a bold
That's
strategy, Cotton.
Hey man, it's happened before.
It has. Arizona Cardinals, Josh Rosen, they stunk it up and they were able to draft some guy named Kyler Murray, who may or may not have signed a pretty big contract this past week. We'll get into that in the next coming weeks. Tom, where do you see this team finishing?
Yeah, I can't say I disagree with where Gannon put them. I don't want them to end up that way, but there's a lot of variables here. A lot is changing, and I just don't think that it's going to fit this year. Potentially next year, maybe a year after that, but I don't think this year we're going to see all of those pieces put into place quite yet.
So you have them bottom three in the NFL, last in the division.
Yeah, I don't know if I put them strictly bottom three, but yeah, one of the bottom teams. Um, I'd put them fourth in the division. I'd say Lions will get third.
Uh, I don't think they've have devalued, gotten worse to the point where they're worse than the Lions. But I think they're right on par with the Lions. So I think this will be a battle of that third and fourth spot. It would not surprise me at all to see this team go 6-11 again this year. Again, you losing Allen Robinson and replacing him with Byron Pringle. That's
Mm.
that's a downgrade. I don't care how you look at it. And you're losing Khalil Mack, the leadership that he has. Matt, I mean, I believe their coaching is only going to improve. I do not like what their coaching did last year. So I think that automatically puts them in a better position. So I think this team is a 6-11, maybe a 7-10 team. They're not very good, but there's some talent there and they'll win some games because of it. And then we get to the team that had one of the most odd free agency periods this year. I looked at what they did and I sat there and just I couldn't figure out what they were trying to do. I'm talking about the Minnesota Vikings. Now they obviously fired their coach and they signed their new coach Kevin O'Connell, offensive coordinator for the Super Bowl champions Rams. They are going to switch their offense from a running oriented scheme to a passing oriented scheme. For anybody who's looking at fantasy football, Justin Jefferson might want to jot that name down, put a little check mark by it, circle it, underline it, highlight it.
For sure.
I'm not a fantasy expert by any means, but just saying. Um, we're gonna get more into that here in a second, I'm sure. But the Vikings, after all of that, what did they do in the offseason? They really just kind of didn't do anything. Like, here's a team that went 8-9. They're a middle of the pack team. They've been a middle of the pack team, and they didn't go full rebuild mode, but they're not adding pieces to get better. It's like they want to stay 8-9. Gannon, what? Tell me what? Open, open my eyes. What did they? What was their plan this offseason?
Uh, I have no idea why you would re-sign Kirk Cousins. Why would you do that? He's like average at best QB, and you switch your whole offense to a passing offense. Justin Jefferson, I love. Dalvin Cook, I love. But
Adam
I mean,
Thielen.
Adam Thielen, he's all right. That's all you have, right? I I don't see them doing any better than they did last year, even with the new coach. Even with the new coach. But I mean, I wanna say they can do better. They have potential. They have, you know, guys there, but is it enough? No. I don't think it is.
Um, what was their goal this offseason?
I don't even know. I don't know. Like you were saying, it's this team always confuses me because you look at Kirk Cousins and you think, oh, it's a decent quarterback. I wouldn't mind having him as a quarterback for my team. And then you go watch them play and you're trying to figure out what even they're doing on the field. So I don't know. I think the main, and I mean, of course, with the head coach change, that's the main question for me. He was under McVay. McVay makes the play calls. So now he's coming in as head coach. He's going to be calling some of the plays as well. So he's doing both now and trying to figure out what both of those look like. So he's not only learning head coach, he's learning how to do those play calls as well. So that's quite a bit for me, and I think it's going to be a transition for him to get to that point. Um, but yeah, I think I don't know because it kind of seemed like to me you may want to start rebuilding this team, but they didn't do that. They instead extended some of what they were trying to do. I think Kirk Cousins was one of the ones that got an extension. So clearly they believe something's going to happen this year, or they believe in the team that they have. And I guess everyone's trying to figure out what they see and what they're going to put together this year.
All right. I have an interesting question. We've mentioned Kirk Cousins. Both of you mentioned Kirk Cousins. If you had an A tier, which is a player who will ascend your team, a B tier, which is you can win with and can do quite a bit, a C tier, which is average, D tier, you win in spite of, F tier, you just can't win with. Where would you put Kirk Cousins? And I'm gonna start this off with Gannon. Which tier?
It's got to be C tier.
And they treat him like he's a
Yeah.
B tier. I mean,
I
that's kind of the problem I think with the Vikings.
I don't think they know what they have. I think that they overvalue him
Yeah.
a lot. So
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's a mix of what are we going to do if we get rid of him? Who else is there for us to go after if we get rid of Kirk Cousins? Um, but I looked up his record, and it's funny you put him in that tier because that's his record as a starting quarterback is 59, 59, and 2.
Yep.
He is 100% an average C quarterback if you go by stats.
Now, one thing that I find entertaining when it comes to Kirk Cousins is that he got kicked off the Washington football team. He basically, right, like they were refused to sign him. They were just going to tag him and tag him and tag him. He
Mm-hmm.
becomes a free agent. He signs with the Vikings, and he just does exactly what he did. He sometimes would do a little bit better. I mean, that, you like that, I mean, that moment, um, and everything that transpires with that. But you made a great point, and that is, what do you do when you have an average quarterback? Obviously, you want to replace average with good or great, but you have to at least have average because you don't want below average. It's expensive to pay for an average quarterback in the NFL today.
Mm-hmm.
And Kirk Cousins is like the perfect example of that. I mean, numbers wise, he always throws for a lot of yards. He throws for a decent, excuse me, amount of touchdowns. But his win loss record is abysmal. We just heard it 59, 59, and 2. I don't know where, they're paying him as though he's an A or B tier quarterback. To me, he's a C tier, but he does do some things that you can win with. But I thought they should have rebuilt this team, and they seem to try to plug the holes, and I'm not very keen on them. I do think, and I'll kind of go first on this, I do think they finished second because I think they're a middle of the pack 8-9, 9-8 team. And some of those wins are against four of those wins are against the Lions and Bears. Oh my. Uh, Tom, where do you see this team finishing?
Yeah, I think they'll do what they've always done. They'll somehow find a way to get wins, but they won't be meaningful wins. They won't get them necessarily to the playoffs, and even if they do, they're not going to, make it past the first round. So yeah, I'd say same thing. Probably second in the division with like a 500 record, close to that, maybe close to a winning record, but it'll be like we're saying, they'll have wins, they'll have the record, but it just won't there won't be any substance to it, and it'll just be the same old Viking season.
One of the things that I felt that they should have entertained was actually trading a superstar to try to rebuild this team, and that is remove Dalvin Cook.
Mm-hmm.
You can't tell me teams wouldn't have been itching to try to get a running back like of Dalvin Cook's caliber. But they didn't. We're gonna see what happens. Gannon, where does this team finish the season within the division, and maybe give me a record as well.
Gosh. You know, I gotta agree with you guys. Probably second. Uh, it's just this team is just average. I don't see them beating the Packers at all. Like, I don't see them getting the wild card. I don't see them going to the playoffs. I, they have to improve. And I just like the Bears. Where, where did they, you know, where did they improve? I don't see it. So, but they're definitely second and not third or fourth. I don't think they are Lions tier or Bears tier, but still not Packers tier. So,
They up
um, as for record, 6 wins, 7 wins.
okay. One
That's
thing
all.
that I do think that they did this offseason is they upgraded their offense into a new age offense. Kevin O'Connell is going to run a 2022 offense. It is going to be pass heavy. It's going to be three receiver sets. They're going to use Dalvin Cook, split him out, do a lot of stuff, and that is going to be interesting. I like seeing that new age style offense. The run first offenses don't work in the NFL today. You got to air it out, and when you got a guy at Justin Jefferson's caliber, I want to see that. But like I said, I already told you, I think they're a middle of the pack team, 8-9, 9-8, somewhere in there.
Right.
This is one of those weird divisions this year where I think every team got worse or stayed about the same. You look at a lot of divisions and they made drastic improvements from trades, free agent signings, and really tried to revamp their team in all sorts of ways. And then you have what the Packers did. Yeah, we signed Aaron Rodgers, the greatest quarterback to ever wear number 12. I like that. Like that a lot. And then they trade Devontae Adams. They are a team that, has this great quarterback and this great wide receiver. But they drafted AJ Dillon in the second round and they don't draft receivers. And so what do? They want to run the ball. What they just to me they just summarized the whole NFC North. It was an odd offseason for every team. Yes, I know Gannon. The Lions may have improved a little bit. Not enough for me to agree with that statement.
The-
What were the Packers doing this offseason? Gannon. What were they doing?
Uh, well, if you're the Packers, are you really scared of the teams in your division?
Doesn't matter if I'm scared of the teams within the division.
Like
They haven't
even
won a Super Bowl.
listen, okay, yes, they might
Oh,
have
wow.
lost Devontae Adams, but they've won three straight divisions or three straight years. I
Hope
mean,
so.
they have. I think they're going for a fourth. Like they're the clear-cut division winner. I even without Devontae Adams, even if doesn't seem like they did anything, they bring back Aaron Rodgers. Better with him than without him. They're still the leader of the pack. He's the king of the North. I just
Leader of the pack. I see what you did there. Nicely done. Tom, they signed Nicolas Cage to that big contract. I'm sorry, I said Nicolas Cage. I don't know why I would have said that. If anybody did not know, he walked into camp yesterday looking just like the man from Con Air, Nicolas Cage himself. It is a spitting image. Please look it up if you don't know what I'm talking about. Aaron Rodgers, they keep him happy. He's a Packer this year. What are they going to do at wide receiver?
It their offseason pretty much tells me that they feel he's all they need for offense. Aaron Rodgers is all they need. They'll let him, at least in the passing game, right? They don't need receivers. He can find the receivers and get the ball to them no matter who they are. Um, but I think we don't, we're talking about the receiver core, which I think they still have Cobb this year. Watkins is coming in as a veteran. That seems to be what they're looking for is we want veterans that know what it takes, have been there before, and can get the job done. But don't discount, and I'm not saying anyone is discounting, but don't discount the running backs. When they have Jones and Dillon on the team, those are two top tier running backs that have been very productive. Dillon, especially last year, of course, Jones the last couple of years. Um, but with Rodgers and those two in the backfield, that's still a very potent offense, even without the best or top five wide receiver in the NFL.
When they hired their head coach a couple years ago, one of my concerns was they hired the offensive coordinator from the Tennessee Titans, who is a run first
Mm-hmm.
team. And the coach wants to instill a run first offense. And I just got done saying that I like offenses that are 2022 offenses and not run first built back in the 1920s. I believe that that offense works because Aaron Rodgers is the QB at the helm and that there is nobody with a better connection than Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams. Now, Devontae Adams made an amazing quote when he said that going from Hall of Famer to Hall of Famer, there's an adjustment period. So Aaron Rodgers was asked a question about the wide receivers, and he says, "Well, there's an adjustment going from Hall of Famer to Hall of Famer," referring to going from Devontae Adams to Alan Lazard as a little jab back. Gannon, Aaron Rodgers seems to have a lot of confidence this year. He's being a little cocky. Is this going to be another MVP type year from Aaron Rodgers?
probably not. But if you're that good, it kind of affords you the right to be that cocky. You know, Packers have been good as long as I could remember watching football. Like they're a good team, and Aaron Rodgers is a great quarterback, top five quarterback. So it's like I think he can afford to be a little cocky.
And Tom, last year there was a lot of rumors that Aaron Rodgers was unhappy. Now he looks very happy. And of course, when you pay somebody $50 million, they tend to be a little bit happier. Is this bad for the rest of the NFL?
I don't know yet. Last year, I remember going into the fantasy draft in my league, and no one wanted to touch Aaron Rodgers. Everyone thought he was washed up. He was gonna regress. We talked about a potential team doing that last week. He did the opposite. He got pissed off, and he basically won the lead. So I think I don't ever discount him. My question is though, if the Packers don't make it to or make a run for the Super Bowl, is that a bad season for them? Because I think they still have all the pieces and they're still a good team. And if they were to not have some of the running backs, Aaron Rodgers, they're going to have to go into rebuilding. That's the core of the team right now. So is this the year that they have to make a run for the Super Bowl? That's what I would expect out of them.
You go back a few years ago, and what you got out of the Packers was offense. Offense and more offense. That's what they were known for. And you kind of basically expected them to win games 45-42.
Hmm.
And you hope that their defense would just do enough. Now, there's all sorts of top 100 players or top 10 in these positions and all that stuff. And you'll notice on one side of the football, on defense, the Packers, they got some players. They got one of the best corners in the NFL. They've got some really young, good players on defense. Why this team is a Super Bowl caliber team. We know this. They went 13-4 last year. I believe they were the number one seed in the NFC. Like, you, of course, they're a good team. Why is it seems every year they get into the playoffs and then they fall apart? What is it about this team? Is it number 12? Is it coaching? Is it that they just get beat up? Why can't they make it over that hump? Tom, I'm gonna kick this one to you, since you got to watch the Bucks do that, beat them 2 years ago.
Yeah, I don't know if you go back to their playoff run last year. I don't think anyone would doubt that the offense lost them that game at the end. They just didn't show up in that game, and I don't even think they had an offensive touchdown right in that last game. I mean, it was pretty bad, and so to say it's not Aaron Rodgers' fault, to say it's not the offense's fault, I don't know I can do that. So yeah, I don't know. There may be something in the playoffs that the pressure gets to him, maybe with the fact that some of the positions aren't as experienced. We talked about kind of having, Devontae Adams kind of be at the helm there. Maybe that's what they need is to get rid of him and have some other people step up. Maybe there's a lot of reliance on some of these MVPs and everyone else feels like they're just along for the ride. Um, I don't know, but potentially this will allow other people to step up and bring in other veterans to show them this is what it takes. This is how we need to work. This is what the season is going to look like. Maybe that'll help out. Maybe that'll show them the path. But yeah, I think if you look at the playoffs and look at some of the losses, a lot of it can be pinned on some of the way the offense is played in the postseason.
Absolutely. I mean, I remember the Bucks game 2 years ago. You kept waiting for Aaron Rodgers to have that Aaron Rodgers moment, and for one reason or another, it just never seemed to happen
Hmm.
until the inevitable interception where the Buccaneers corner definitely grabbed and yanked and pulled and tugged the wide receiver. But that's a different story. Um, yeah, I'm not bitter watching that game at all. But Gannon, what is it with this team, and why can't they make it over the hump? And become a Super Bowl team. I mean, Aaron Rodgers has done it before. Why can't they do it now?
That's a loaded question, and I don't know if I even have the answer for you. I know that, Aaron Rodgers is a great quarterback, but pressure gets to everybody eventually, right? So, maybe that was just nerves, or maybe he just COVID. I don't know.
Is it fair? Is it fair to put all that pressure on a quarterback? I mean, one of the things that I love to bring up is like Joe Burrow had this great run and just took the Bengals to the Super Bowl. And you look at his numbers, and I was on, I don't know if I was on record on the podcast saying it, they were very Tom Brady like numbers. And I don't mean that as a compliment. Brady in the playoffs, 220 yards, a touchdown, no, and a pick or something like that. Like you don't have to do that much in the playoffs to be successful. You need a team effort. Aaron Rodgers sometimes lacked that team effort. I mean, if you can shut Devontae Adams down and Aaron Jones, I believe, was nicked up, that dismantled their entire offense. Now, can they, now they've got AJ Dillon, they have Aaron Jones. They're hoping that Sammy Watkins can finally live up to his first round draft potential and stay healthy. They're relying on Alan Lazard to take that next step. They're they're hoping that these young guys can move up and become these playmakers that they envisioned. But do they have enough? Is this a Super Bowl caliber team, or is this a team that's going to fall once again, make the playoffs, beat up on their division, and then fall short? Gannon, I'm kicking this one right back to you.
You know, Devontae Adams is one of the best wide receivers in the league. I don't I don't know if these young guys have what it takes to step in his shoes. You know, but here's the thing, Aaron Rodgers works magic. So you can't really put it past him to get the ball where it needs to go. It's just up to these younger guys if they have what it takes to step up and fill those shoes.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, to be fair though, a lot of like when I think of Aaron Rodgers last season, a lot of his magic was throwing the ball up and letting Adams find it and catch it. Like
Exactly.
that was a lot of
Yeah.
the plays. I was like, I don't know how Adams just caught that ball, but he did and they got a first down. So he doesn't have that anymore.
And like you said, the connection between Aaron Rodgers, there's nobody better. But that connection was perfect.
Hmm.
I mean, the only team or combo receiver QB combo I'd say that maybe had that same connection also got traded, and that was Mahomes and Hill.
Yep.
And but even then, I still would take the Rogers to sorry Nicolas Cage to Devontae Adams over and over again. But we'll see at the end of the day. I mean, we're obviously before preseason starts. The season is nowhere close to starting yet. I mean, we're a couple months away, but you just wonder if they did enough, and you have to keep wondering why don't they draft receivers? Why don't they give the offense more help? But then they have done it on defense, and they've got those young guys, and now they have a better team than they did 3 years ago. So I guess, I mean, well, I'll ask the question because we have to ask it since we've asked it for every other team. Tom, where do you see this team finishing in the division? But more importantly, where do you think they end the year?
Record wise at the end of the year,
Not just record wise, but maybe, are they the NFC champs representing the Super Bowl? Are they, a one and done in the playoffs?
yeah, that's man, that's tough. Like of course, division, I don't see anyone contesting that number one spot. I think they're going to win the division again, but it is tough to put this team where I feel they're going to fall at the end of the season. It could go. It's like a seesaw. It could go either way, in my opinion. But if they're the team everyone thinks they are, and Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback everyone thinks he is, yeah, I can see them doing the same thing they did last year. I just see them having a 13 win season. I just see them being, the division and the conference champions. Um, I would like to see them in a Super Bowl. I'd like to see Aaron Rodgers make it there
Greatest,
and win a Super Bowl.
yeah, the greatest quarterback to ever wear number 12 to win another Super Bowl would be fun to watch. I agree.
Brady doesn't need another like he's run out of fingers at this point. But yeah, I don't know. I think they have the potential. It's kind of what we were saying about the other teams. It's so hard to call early on, but with the track record of some of the players on the Packers, I think they can go far this season.
And Gannon, I'm going to ask you the same question. Where do you think they're going to finish in the division? But more importantly, where do they end in the season? Like, how do they match up to the rest of the NFL?
So clear cut number one. Let's get that out of the way. As far as playoffs, they're going. Whether they win, I don't know. I It's hard because Devonte Adams isn't there, and you have a bunch of not Devonte Adams. And so I don't know. I would say I think six, right? 13 wins is probably where it's at. And I think that they get into the playoffs, maybe win the first round, and dip out in the second round.
So I definitely think they're going to win the division, no question. And I've thought about this a lot. This goes back when the whole chaos of free agency happened. And it's what are the powerhouses in the NFC? And there really isn't that many anymore. A lot of the really good players kind of moved over to the AFC. I mean, Russell Wilson, and a lot of different players. So you really started to kind of try to figure out, well, which team is going to kind of rise above everybody else. And I do think when you look at this division, you look at the Vikings, Bears, and Lions, I think the Packers are set up to be the number one seed in the NFC. And with that, assuming that they stay healthy, and again, everything is, assuming everybody stays healthy. When you have a really strong running game and a really strong defense, and you have a Hall of Fame right quarterback, you should go far. And if you're a Packers fan, I think anything less than representing the NFC Championship game is a failure. If you're a one and done in the playoffs or you win one game and lose in the divisional round, I think that's a failure. This team needs to be in the NFC Championship game or the Super Bowl before this season to be a success. So I think they make the NFC Championship game. It'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. I question their wide receiver core, and I think everybody should and does and will until they prove that that's not the weakness.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll see how big of a Devonte Adams loss that was. I mean, they couldn't afford him. They were up against the salary cap, so I get it. But whew, a division that has been weakened, I think everywhere you look. So where does this since I know we're real close to that hour mark, real quick, Gannon, how does this division stack up to some of the other ones we've discussed? Are they better, worse, and about the same?
I think they're about the same. I mean, you got two. Well, okay. Here's the thing: you got one really good team, and then you got one team, and then you have your two bottom tiers. As we discussed in all of these, there's two teams that are really trash, and they're there. I will give the Lions just a little bit because it's the Lions. Um, but yeah, no, pretty much the same. Like
I gotcha. And Tom, when you look at this division, what are you excited or most interested in this upcoming season about this division itself?
I think this one has the most questions for me than the other ones. We kind of knew where like Houston was going to fall. I think we feel like Cincinnati, the Browns. You kind of can feel where those teams are going to be this year. You have a good idea of the range they're going to be at. But this division has a lot of question marks for me. A lot of new head coaches, We're seeing a brand, second year quarterback taking his sophomore year. Is he going to have that step up? So there's a lot of things that could blow up. Maybe not in rankings and wins for this division, but there's a lot of players to pay attention to and a lot of things to pay attention to that could be interesting throughout the year.
All right. Well, I think we did a pretty good job covering the NFC North. I know that none of us follow this division super close because our fandoms kind of lie a little elsewhere. But these teams, they got a lot of history. They are good teams. They are kind of fun to watch. Kirk Cousins is a polarizing figure. Aaron Rodgers and Nicolas Cage is great. This is a very fun division, and we're gonna see a lot of them. I'm excited to see how the Dan Campbell effect actually works this year. And so there's a lot to be looking forward to. If you are fans of this team and you hated what we said about them, I'm sorry. I just speak facts. And that's just the way it is. So my favorite segment that we always do, I'm gonna kick it to Gannon here. Your final thoughts on anything. What's on your head? What's on your mind? Get it out.
I am really looking forward to seeing the Lions this season because you gotta root for the underdog, and what bigger underdog than the Lions? How much everybody trashes them. Like, if your team gets beat by the Lions, wow, your team sucks. It's kind of one of those. But this year, they're gonna turn some heads. I see it.
Here's the thing. So sick. Your final thoughts
I think,
on this week.
yeah, this division, the person I am watching the most in this division, Justin Jefferson. You kind of hit on it earlier. He has the most receiving yards of any wide receiver in his first two seasons ever in the NFL. So he's, can already be considered a breakout, but the impact he'll have on the game, I've heard certain analysts say he's the best receiver in the game right now. So watching him this season, seeing what the Vikings can do with him, and seeing where his career takes him, but definitely that's the guy I'll be watching this season.
Yeah, he's definitely an elite player. My final thoughts is very simple. There was a report that came out about some NFL GMs or defensive players giving about offensive players, and the NFL has an issue. And I like to leave it a little lighthearted, but this was not. Why is it that two black quarterbacks are being picked on the most by anonymous GMs? Lamar Jackson, it can't be a quarterback, and Patrick Mahomes can't go to a second and third read. It's absolutely abysmal that defensive coaches think that way. And if your team has a guy that thinks that way, well, you're in trouble because they're not very good if they think Lamar Jackson's not an elite quarterback and that Patrick Mahomes is a B tier quarterback. With that said, next week we will be back on Tuesday around 9 p.m. Eastern, and we will be talking about a division. I believe it's the AFC West, if I'm not mistaken. If I am, I apologize. But we will see you guys next week. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you guys then. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.